Hello there, everyone, and welcome. I am Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox, and I'm back. I'm alive. I'm here. I'm mostly doing okay, and I'm happy to bring you episode number 38 of the weekly Ratchet. This is a series all about board games, all about new games and recently played games, and I've got some new stuff to tell you about today, some stuff you haven't heard about before, so let's go ahead and get to it here on the weekly Ratchet. Yes, everyone, hello, how are you? Welcome back. I hope you've had a good, let's just say, time of playing games with family and friends. I don't know what day it is today. I have no idea how long it's been since my last Ratchet. I don't even know. It's a little bit chaotic. This is Thanksgiving week here in America. It is Tuesday, the 26th of November. Thanksgiving is this Thursday. I didn't get a Ratchet out last week. I just wasn't quite yet in the mindset for it. I've just been kind of doing some stuff with family. We've actually been traveling the past 2 weekends over to Shenandoah, just kind of get away for a little bit. On that note, I want to start off this episode right away, as soon as possible, saying thank you to all of you who offered words of support, words of encouragement, words of just patience and understanding as we mourned the loss of our beloved pet Tinwald. He was kind of the subject of episode number 37. He passed away a couple weeks ago, and it was just a lot of folks are very supportive, and I just want to say thank you. As I said, we were at the cabin. Actually, we were at our cabin in Shenandoah last weekend, and I was thinking about it as I was driving there that it was the first time that I could remember in the past year I actually sort of first stayed there at the cabin the weekend before Thanksgiving. I was still doing a lot of work on it, but we had all the furniture in. It was just little repairs and tweaks and such like that as we tried to get it ready to rent. And so going back last weekend was a full year, and I realized that in that weekend, that time that we were there at Thanksgiving last year, Tinny was there. He spent the whole time with us, and I think he had been there. I think we brought him with us just about every time that we went in the past year. So this past weekend was my first time there without him. Obviously, he was sorely missed, especially in the evenings when I would sit there often and read a rule book or something like that, and always with a cat perched on my shoulder, and I didn't have that, and it was very tough. So again, thank you to all of you who had kind things to say. Not that anyone had unkind things to say, but I'm going to even incorporate some of those comments into question of the week this week, seamlessly, quickly. I'm not going to dwell on things, of course, but just want to make sure that I started off this episode saying thank you. All right, not a whole lot in the way of news. I'm going to try and get back into the thick of things. I actually have a lot of stuff to film this weekend. I need to finish up some fun stuff for the food truck race game. That game is already back off in the hands of the designer. I've got all of my content filmed for it. I just need to do my little intro skits. And let's just say I had to purchase another green screen to get that going. So that should be kind of fun. I also have another game that's just come in. I'll mention it here in just a second. I'm also going to be back on the Dice Tower here in the next week as I need to put out a top 10 games of 2024. Tom invited us contributors to put something together, and I will be doing that this weekend. So I am looking forward to doing that. I haven't been on the Dice Tower channel, I think, since August. So it'll be kind of nice. As far as the game that came in, I'm going to go ahead and mention this now. It's the only game I've gotten in the past 2 weeks. This is a game called Taxi, the game of fair play by a gentleman by the name of Mark Miller. He was sort of connected to me by another viewer actually out on the Dice Tower. And he sent me this game. This is coming to Kickstarter in March of next year. I don't know much about it. It's a lightweight, I don't know if it's quite family weight. It's a 13 and up game about a taxi. Like I said, I've kind of briefly opened it. I haven't opened the bags or anything yet, so I don't know too much about that. I'll tell you more about it later. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump straight into question of the week. All right, a lot to get to here today. I actually have several games to chat about. Believe it or not, I did get some plays in over the past 2 weeks, so I'm going to go ahead and launch things off with question of the week. I asked you last week, how do you store your games, vertically or the right way? Horizontally. Had some fun discussion here. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Jeremy Brooks first said he was sorry to hear about Tinny. Thank you for that. And then added that he mixes it up. Most are horizontal, but some of his nicer looking games, like Life of the Amazonia, are stored vertically facing forward so the artwork can be appreciated. You know what? I can respect that. And I did that for a little bit. Most of your Kallax shelves are deep enough that you can actually fit a couple of games stacked vertically and put a game in front of it faced vertically. And if you have like a Ticket to Ride size box, that'll just about fill the entire, sort of outline of each cubby of a Kallax. And so, yes, you can get a real nice look to your room. You walk in and just see, these, it looks like really big games, but of course it's just a regular game and you can still store stuff behind it. So not a bad idea there. Wonderflonium said he used to store everything horizontally, but has switched a bit to vertical storage as it's more space efficient. But he does take into consideration component discombobulation. He also shared a story about a pet cat that adopted his family when they moved into a house some time ago, and I wanted to say thanks for sharing that story. Otherwise, I can agree that the component discombobulation is a big reason to sort of go with horizontal storage, and of course more on that as we get through the rest of these comments. Wayne Kruger said vertical is the answer for him as it makes the games easier to access. And we're going to see that theme a lot throughout these comments, that, when the games are stacked vertically, you can just kind of pull one out and you're good to go. I don't rely on that too much because, again, things can sort of fall apart. You can get lids that sort of start to separate, and I've got some more topics on that here coming up. I'll also share that Wayne shared a story about his 2 cats that he lost during the COVID pandemic, and it took him a long time to recover from that, and only recently, within the past few months, adopted 2 more kittens. Wayne, when I read that, I was like, God, I couldn't even imagine dealing with that during COVID. So really my heart goes out to you on that one, and I'm very excited to know that you have some new furry love probably tearing up your house as we speak. Dan Cheston said that he mostly stores vertically, but confessed that some games have inserts that don't store well vertically. And I think, again, that's the big part of it, is that if you don't like to use baggies for everything, and I do not like to use baggies for everything, then vertical doesn't always work well. Omar Hernandez also offered his condolences, thank you very much, and said that he stores games either way, considering both ease of access and component organization. Again, a lot of themes that we're already starting to see, again and again. Teshera said that he mostly stores vertically for ease of access, and also as he likes the bookshelf aesthetic. And I've heard about this one before. You store books, vertically, and you should store games like that too. My argument being that games aren't books, but I'll talk about that more here in a little bit. Simulation Chris offered his condolences, thank you Chris, and then added that horizontal is the right way. He said that he might wedge some smaller games in vertically to utilize space, but often stores his smaller games in a drawer. Anyways, Chris, you and I are on the same wavelength, sir, is what I was trying to say. I've got a couple cubbies over here in the Kallax that is rarely ever on camera, that is just filled with all the small box games, because I got tired of just trying to wedge them into open spaces in a shelf. All right, Yellow Leo, a first-time poster, didn't address the question of the week, but he shared some lovely quotes regarding pets that I just had to share. The first is from an author named Robert Brault, who said, "The difference between friends and pets is that friends we allow into our company, pets we allow into our solitude." The second is from author Leo Dworkin, who said, "No amount of time can erase the memory of a good cat, and no amount of masking tape can ever totally remove his fur from the couch." Those really cheered me up. And I just want to say welcome to the channel. Thank you very much for those words. And I did kind of go and find out who the original authors of them were. So that was really nice. I appreciate that. Thanks and welcome again. My friends at the Meeple Society said that they store their games in both ways, vertically because they're foolish, and horizontally if those games tend to get too disheveled when stored vertically. just teasing you guys. I also know that Katie and Greg of the Meeple Society recently lost their cat Jarvis, who was featured in most, if not all, of their videos, usually at their kind of an end segment that they filmed with him a while back. So we know very well what each other is going through. Mark from Australia said that he was sorry to hear about Tinny and offered some wonderful words of encouragement. Thank you very much, Mark. He also said that he likes the aesthetics of vertically stored games and the ease of access, though added again that where inserts are involved, he tends to store those games horizontally. Again, a lot of the same stuff, right? Ease of access, you can pull the games out a little easier, but they can tend to get a little wonky on you. Tony Lawhorn simply mentioned that he too is a cat person and offered his condolences. Thank you for that, Tony. Meanwhile, Board Games Vibes also shared a story of a beloved cat he lost several years ago and took a while before adopting another. That was a great story. Thank you very much. He also added that he likes the look of games stored vertically as it reminds him of a library or of a video game collection, and mentioned the worries of storing horizontally with heavier games and hoping that they don't crash too hard when pulling out a game from underneath. Now, I'm going to try my best to kind of film this. I'm going to have to move some stuff around here to do so, but I kind of have a trick that I use when I pull especially a bottom game out from the cubby of a Kallax shelf. I kind of hook my thumbs on the game above it and push it onto the shelf as I'm pulling that bottom box out, let it kind of catch that shelf, and then just slide everything right back into place. And I reverse that. I kind of hold the game against my gut and the shelf, and then slide the boxes out right on top of it, lift it up, stick it right in the cubby, and then line everything back up. So I don't know. It's obviously not a special trick or anything. It's just the way that I do it. But because you're at most lifting maybe 4 or 5 games, I don't really ever see why that's that much of a hassle. Even if you have to just pull out the whole cubby, set the top ones to the side, pull out the one that you want, put the rest of them back on the shelf. I don't know. To me, that ease of access seems like sort of a fairly easy workaround, given all the other reasons to keep your games well organized, stored horizontally. Anyways, Ace Z Brat offered his condolences over Tinny. Thank you for that. And lastly, Jamie Wiley said that he mostly stores horizontally as he prefers inserts, often homemade ones, over baggies, and horizontal keeps everything in its place. So again, we have seen a lot of very similar arguments in both cases, right? A lot of folks think that the vertical boxes look nicer, and there are a lot of games, and in fact, I've seen this in a lot of more recent games. You know, you got 4 sides, obviously, to a box, and most developers, most publishers will make sure that one of those spines, one of those sides looks right when stored vertically, and other ones look best when stored horizontally. The one game, the food truck race game that I had, I don't think he had any side that was printed for horizontal storage, or at least the logo was really, really small. It was just kind of off in a corner. And I said, hey, you should really consider putting a big logo on at least one of those edges for folks who like to store their games horizontally. Now, if you're keeping score here, we had 6 folks said mostly vertical, 3 said mostly horizontal, and 2 said that there's a mix. Again, I know the library debate, but again, these aren't books, they're boxes. You could argue, and I've seen the argument, well, they have rule books, right? Well, rule books are often kind of like a magazine. If you've ever seen magazines on a library shelf, they're usually in some sort of an organizer. And if it's not completely full, then all those magazines are slumped to one side and bent in the middle. Have you ever tried to open the pages on a bent magazine? It's a pain in the butt. So again, just another argument towards storing horizontally. As I mentioned, I don't like a lot of bags. I really love either buying or making organizers that just let you kind of pull out an organizer and there's all your pieces. Now, if I can, I design a lid, but lids are really, really difficult when it comes to things like 3D printing. With the folded space, the foam inserts that you can buy, they don't have any lids. And so again, it's like, you take any of those things and you tip them on their side, and it's like a hurricane went off inside your box. And on that note, and I've mentioned this in an episode, it was either an episode or something else I did a long time ago. When I moved into this house, when I moved all my games into this room, we had to very quickly pack from the house that we came from. And I was taking games off of shelves, which was a smaller collection than this, and throwing everything into U-Haul boxes stacked on their edge, because you are right, it's a little easier to organize things when they're stacked vertically. For one thing, you can kind of see a little better where your pockets are. And so I was cramming stuff in. And as I was pulling all those boxes back out, every single one of them had lid lift, and you would tilt the box onto its back, and you could just hear all this stuff kind of pouring back inside the box. And it was just, I was so furious by the time I was done organizing these shelves. One thing, I absolutely loathed the landlord that made us do that. But I kind of swore from that moment on that I was never going to store a game vertically unless it was absolutely built to do so, or there was some other compelling reason to do so. And so that's why I am heartily on Team Horizontal. Anyways, that was a great discussion. For question of the week next week, I'm going to go ahead and throw this one out now. We're coming up on the holiday season. I know that most of my viewers are here in the U.S. Of course, other countries don't celebrate Thanksgiving Day, but the question I kind of have is just a very casual, open-ended one. What are you maybe hoping to get played this weekend? What are you aiming to get played this weekend? If you have family coming over who doesn't normally play games, are there either some things you're going to try and introduce them to? Do you have some go-to games that you rely on specifically for non-gaming family or friends? Just kind of let, again, open-ended, tell me whatever you want to tell me about gaming over the Thanksgiving weekend. Looking forward to hearing some of those solutions. All right, I've got a handful of games I have played in the last week, so let's wrap things up with recently played games. All right, so a lot of games to chat about this week, as I already mentioned, and only a few of them you've heard about already. So I'm going to try and go ahead and get through this fairly quick because at least the last one or two are pretty big. All right, this first one is Avant-Card, sort of based on that avant-garde art style. This was a gift to me from my good buddy Daniel back in May for my birthday. And we finally got a chance to play this out, actually, I think a week or so ago. This is a very straightforward deck building game where you start off with, I believe, 10 cards, numbered 1 to maybe 14, and each card comes in up to 4 different colors. I think there was purple, blue, yellow, red, maybe a gray or a white in there, so there may even be a couple more than 4 colors. And basically what you're doing is there's simultaneous play. You play out up to 7. You have a hand of 7 of your cards, and you're playing out these cards and just trying to build a constant run by matching either the number or the color. So if you had a yellow 2, you can follow with a yellow card or a 2 of any color. And you're just trying to get as many cards out as you can. Each card that you play is worth, I believe, $1. Maybe worth more than $1. I can't quite remember. And then some of those numbers from especially 2 until I believe 9 will have different abilities that they will trigger. Now you start off the game with only 1s and 2s, and then like the 11 through 14, the 1s and those double-digit numbers don't do anything. The 2s, whenever you've played out your hand of cards, whoever has played the most 2s gets an extra $1 that they can then spend to buy these additional cards. And so you have a display of 2 through 9, and you can purchase those cards. You can also, before you make the purchase, you can sort of burn the top card of one of those decks, just putting that card on the bottom, and that may give you a different color because each card is organized by its number. And so if you want a 2, but maybe you don't want the top color of the 2s, you can try and tuck it to see if there's a color underneath that you'd rather have. Very straightforward. If you've played, I think, at least 6 cards, maybe more, you can start getting these awards. And I say more because some cards will let you draw additional cards from your deck. And again, as you're playing out higher and higher numbers of cards, you start to collect extra points, extra awards, and those awards just sit aside. And in that instance, it's kind of like Dominion, as you're just playing more stuff to get these points. Once the points run out, the game is over. Whoever has the most points win. It's very, very simple. What I did like about it, besides the fact that it's a deck builder, and I love deck building games, is that there are 2 or 3 different sets of these cards. So those 2 through 9s, you can change the rules of them with these kind of built-in extra decks that it comes with. So you can play in a variety of different ways with different effects. And again, that'll kind of encourage you to build a unique deck every time you play. So I thought that was kind of nice. Relatively small footprint, really interesting packaging with this. I'll try and show a picture if I can. The way that these cards are kind of organized is just kind of unique. We thought it was pretty neat. Anyways, that was Avant-Card. Up next, we played a game of Hi-Fi. I've chatted about this one a couple times here in the Ratchet, so I won't dig into this too much, but we played a 2-player game, just my wife and I. And I'll tell you, it's a bit different at 2 because if you remember, you're playing these cards out onto kind of like a mixing board, trying to get different instruments to play in different segments of a song. And with only 2 people putting cards out on the table, it becomes a good bit more difficult to set up the scoring criteria that you're looking for out of these specific cards. And so there is one additional round in this game versus, say, a 3-player game, which is 1 round longer than a 4-player game. But we definitely found that we were basically just trying to fulfill our own cards, as soon as we could, and then start looking for opportunities to modify any of the tracks that were out there to set up other scoring criteria. My wife played this a bit like I did last time I played it, in that she just went hard into those scoring cards and whomped me pretty good at the end of this game. I'm still enjoying it. I don't know if 2 players is best, although it was still a decent puzzle. So I don't know, still a game I'm enjoying. High five. After that, I was invited to my friend Matt Gallo's place, and we played the game called Hegemonic, not to be confused with Hegemony. I had actually seen this at the RiverCon event that I was at a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned they had sort of a game flea market, and there was a copy of this sitting there. And I picked it up and I thought, oh, what is this? And Mike, who was there, goes, oh, I have that. We should play it sometime. And then he set up a weekend to play it. Such a go-getter he is. Hegemonic it's billed as a 4X game, but it is actually quite an old game. In fact, I think this one came out maybe 2014 or even older than that. Because I want to say it was, in fact, a 14-year-old game. So it may be more like a 2010, something like that. Anyways, it's a 4X game, but in a fairly abstract way. And it's been a little while since I played this, so I'm going to try to remember the details of it. But you have a player board in front of you with these 3 rows of buildings. You have these square buildings, these round buildings, and triangular buildings. And they sort of represent, it's not really a theater of combat, but it is a method of competition. So the boxes are industry, sort of market. You can compete to have the best market. The round ones are political, so you can kind of get into political conflict with other players. And then the triangular ones are just military, and in fact they're the only building that is built to stack. So a lot of your other buildings you just kind of have to have spread out, whereas the military ones you can stack up to make them very, very, very powerful. And on your turn, you're always exploring a tile. Everyone kind of explores a tile wherever they want. And then on your turn, you're taking a number of actions. In fact, you're playing cards. That's right. You're playing a card to trigger an effect, and it's one of those things where everyone kind of picks their card secretly, and then you all reveal, and then whoever has the lowest number goes first. Most of the cards will help let you expand. Some of those cards will let you get additional resources. Some of those cards will let you fight. And so the way that you fight is just saying, okay, I'm going to use this building to attack that building. It has to generally, typically, not always, be the same type of building. So you would attack military buildings with your military buildings, political buildings with your political buildings, so on and so forth. And then you're adding up the strength, looking at adjacent buildings, kind of building a network. And then the last thing you do is you play these technology cards, which are multi-use cards, and they'll add a amount of strength from a value in the bottom of that card. Your opponent's doing the same thing. They add up their strength. They're playing a card as well, trying to obviously get a higher value than you. And that's basically it. There is this weird aspect in that when you go to attack someone, you have to pay money based on their strength. So basically, the bigger the conflict that you're going up against, the more that you have to pay. As a result, money was very, very, very hard to come by. There is this aspect of, as you're building these buildings out, you build them from the left to the right on your board, and you'll get more and more income just in money in each round. But then also you get to keep some money at the end of each round. And for some reason, that number goes down. The more buildings that you have out, the less money that you can store from round to round. And I think that's just what I call a game rule, not a theme rule, right? That's a way to keep someone from getting very, very powerful very quickly. Not at all thematic to the idea of a, galactic conquest game, right? Anyways, I'm glad that I got to play it without buying that copy that I saw. It was a little too abstract for my taste. It was also very confrontational, although quite ironically, I realized afterwards that I never got attacked. I did a lot of attacking and I lost a couple of fights, but no one ever actually said, I'm attacking your buildings. I don't really know why. There was kind of a little conflict going on with some of the other buddies at the table. No one really knew me all that well. And Mike was on the opposite sort of corner of the galaxy. So even the couple times I tried to go after him, he was just too far away. I couldn't literally physically reach his buildings with mine. So anyways, interesting game. Not really my kind of a 4X, but glad I got to check this out. Next game I played was another round of Tidal Blades. My wife and I are continuing with this storyline. We played the second mission, had a good time of it. And also, speaking of organizers, I just recently got a folded space organizer for this, put it together last night because the storage of this is funky. As with a lot of your dungeon crawling games, there's a ton of different pieces. There's a ton of pieces that will only get used for a couple of missions. There's a bunch of different enemy standees of, each number, 1 through 6 of each enemy type. There's a couple of characters that you'll kind of unlock as you play. There's just a lot in here, and even trying to keep it all organized with baggies was just a nightmare. So glad I got that organizer. We've also moved this game over to the main house, and I have it set up on a separate table, and we're kind of hoping that, occasionally in an evening we can just lift up the table, carry it into the living room, sit there and watch some TV while we're playing some Title Blades. That is our goal, and we will see how that works. But I'm enjoying it so far. I'm not going to detail out every mission for you guys. Obviously, don't want to spoil anything for folks who may want to get into this, but I do love the world of this. I love the colors, and we're already seeing some progression. We're unlocking new cards, unlocking new abilities way quicker than we did in the original Gloomhaven game. And I think the fact that it's not super monstery, weird stuff is what's kind of keeping my wife into it. So anyways, that is Title Blades 2, Rise of the Unfolders. Okay. I'm actually going to skip the second game, the next game that I played, and jump to this one just really, really quickly. This is Bees. I bought this earlier this year while we were over in Harrisonburg, Virginia, nearby where the cabin is. There's a very, very little game store out there. It's kind of a games and trade. I think it's called Horizon Gifts and Games. They're a very, very nice place, but they're really, really overpriced. But I did pick this up on a sale. It's a very, very simple game about being a bee and trying to go around and collect nectar and putting the nectar into your beehive sort of honeycomb network to try and set up various scoring opportunities. There are a couple of public objectives, and you'll have 2 private objectives. And you're flying around this little hexagonal grid of flowers with nectar pellets, little cylinders that represent the different colors of nectar. And if you fly onto a leaf that has nectar or a petal of the flower that has nectar, you can take it. But if you manage to land in the center, the bud of the flower, you can take the larger nectar piece there and one of the adjacent nectars on another petal. And then they're going onto your board based on the movement of your bee. And this is kind of the weird thing. The bees are these really cute little plastic bees on a little pedestal with 6 sides, and each side has a different number value. The direction that the bee is facing in has a little slash, so you cannot fly straight on your turn. However, you can turn 60 degrees either direction and go, I believe it's 1 or 5 spaces, not 1 to 5, 1 or 5. You can spin 120 degrees and head kind of off your back shoulders, and you can go 2 or 4 spaces, or you can spin a 180 and go exactly 3 spaces. And so that kind of unique puzzle, and okay, well, if I turn this way, I can get to there, but I don't really need another purple nectar. I need a green nectar, but the green nectar, there's no way I can even get to it from where I'm sitting, so I'm going to make 2 moves. And so you're trying to kind of plan that out, and it made it a neat, sort of unique little puzzle. If you're looking for something very, very lightweight, or you love bees as a theme, and there are tons of bee games out there, I don't think this one is bad. I think it's maybe even worth a little bit more than what it's scored out on Board Game Geek, but I was also kind of tempted to just leave this at the cabin over the weekend when we played it, because I just don't see it getting a lot of playtime here at the house. But still a cute game, good components, and a relatively reasonable price. Bees. Okay, now I want to get to the big one for the night. This is the last game I'll chat about here today. I mentioned this recently here in the channel. This is Deep Shelf by Richard Keene in Ninth Haven Games. He's the same designer behind Dinogenics, one of my top 10 favorite games. When I first saw Deep Shelf out on Kickstarter a long time ago, I wasn't interested in it. I'm not a big fan of oceans or swimming or the depth of the oceans. I think it's a fascinating subject, but I do not like being underwater. I can swim. I don't have any phobias of water. I did almost drown in a lake once. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I'm just not a deep ocean kind of guy. You will never see me in a submarine. That's a promise. I think they're fascinating. They're awesome, but I don't want to be in one. I'll watch until I can't see it anymore, if you know what I'm saying. Anyways, as I started to learn more about this game and sort of hearing what it did and how it played, I was kind of interested. And Richard, as I mentioned in a previous episode, was nice enough to send me this copy. Daniel and I sat down in the past week and we played this at 2-player, which I'm hearing a lot of talk that's kind of the best player count because there is a lot of thinking in this game. There's a lot of efficiency puzzles. And there's way more than I can possibly get into in a short review here on the channel. But let me try and give a quick summary here. So the idea is that mankind has destroyed the Earth, and they're trying to find resources out of the bottom of the ocean. I know this is not only a recurring theme, but it seems to be a theme that I have a lot of games about in this room. You're starting off in the shallow waters of the ocean, and you'll eventually move into the depth. The deep section of the ocean. There's kind of this dividing line between these hexagonal spaces of the main board, and the idea being that as you get in those deeper spaces, you get more lucrative things that you can find. There are these tiles that when you scout a new location, they're either going to give you a resource, palladium, osmium, gold, kelp. The metals can be processed into a higher quality metal, which then becomes very valuable. The kelp never gets processed, but can be used as, it is actually a quite crucial resource for a couple of things. And in that instance, so far, it's already kind of sounding like underwater cities, because there is also this idea that you have to build these tubes, these kind of little wooden blocks that sit between the various hexes, and they create a pathway for your crawlers to move, which are these very nice little plastic pieces that can pick up and transport these resources. And so yes, in that instance, it's a lot like underwater cities. You represent a company that's trying to be successful gathering these resources, selling them off for profit, and researching new technology that kind of lets you just improve this process. You're basically doing the same thing over and over and over again, but you're getting better and better and better at doing it. And so you're building extractors, you're building refiners, you're building these kind of worker huts that sort of help offset some of those costs as you're growing your various facilities. And then eventually you can get to a superstructure building, a unique building specific only to you and your faction that will unlock an additional action card and some other additional actions. And in that sense, it's actually a bit like the Age of Atlantis game, which I'm a big fan of, where each faction is a little bit asymmetrical, a little bit unique, and has a specific building that only it can build. On your turn, the turn structure is quite easy. You play 2 cards. You play 1 card, you do everything that it says, unless it has a power action and you cannot take it. Then you play a second card, you do everything that it says, top to bottom, and if it has a power action, you can take it. But then that card gets slid to the side in a overwork sort of section of your player board, and it just has to stay there. On your next turn, it will not be available to you. You'll play 2 cards again, but then your second card will swap places with that overworked card from your previous turn, and you'll take it back into your hand. That's it. But everything that you're doing with those actions is so incredibly challenging. It's very limited. You're playing cards that may let you move all of your units, but maybe you need that unit to stay there. Or maybe you're going to get 1 movement, but you need 2 movement to move that unit into the deep. It may let you harvest, but maybe you don't have anything there to harvest with, or maybe you've already harvested everything there at that space. And so the whole game is trying to maximize every one of these steps. You're saying things like, well, gosh, I really need money. To get money, I need to sell something. To sell something, I need to either refine or extract something, and I don't have anything extracted. So I need to build, but I can't build because I don't have any money. And so you get stuck in this loop, and you're trying to, again, maximize and optimize everything that you're doing. You're trying to sort of find that best path to say, okay, well, if I do this right now, I can only move 2 units, but if I wait, maybe I refine, maybe I build something, and I can move 3 units, but I can't do that because I have to move first to be able to build it. Like it was incredibly complicated. The first several turns, we really just had no idea what we were doing. We did start to figure it out, of course, and we started to actually quite get into it, and we did enjoy the game. It was long. I think we played for about 4 to 4.5 hours. And I actually thought Daniel was clobbering me pretty good at this game, as he had quite the engine going. He was generating a ton of resources every couple of turns. He had a huge pile of money going, and money was quite hard, at least for me, to come by. I finished the game with like $3, and he had, I think, $26 or $30 or something like that. couple of things were a little weird, and again, I'm not going to go very, very deep into it here, but for one thing, we didn't really feel like the endgame scoring aligned with the theme. You didn't get necessarily any points for building your biggest superstructure building. Daniel's did generate endgame score, mine didn't. You didn't get points for, building the most efficient network. You weren't necessarily working towards specific goals. All you do at the endgame scoring is first you look at the depth and the shallows of the board. Whoever has the most buildings gets a bunch of points, and second place gets a few less points. And if you're playing 3-player, third, would get a little less than that. There are these technology tiles that you can buy, and they're quite nice. They unlock a bunch of unique abilities for either your submarine or your crawlers, your buildings, whatever, just a variety of different stuff that you can research. And whoever has the most research of the 3 core resources in the game, and I won't go into details of what that means, but they can get a bunch of points. There are these anomalies that you can mine off the ocean bed floor. They can give you points, but their appearance is very randomized in the game. You have no idea if you're ever even going to get any. I managed to get 4 of them. Daniel got 1 of them, so I got a bunch of points there that he didn't get. And then all the money you have at the end of the game is a 5-to-1 ratio. $5 buys you 1 point. So even though he had a bunch of money, it only gave him 5 or 6 points, and I had a lot of other things that he didn't have, and so I came up with the win. And we just kind of felt that, like I said, the scoring, the overall stuff that you're working for doesn't really feel thematic to the game, to this idea of trying to sort of save humanity by exploring the depths of the ocean. There's also this Death Dragon piece, which really just kind of acts like a little deterrent that you can kind of steer at other players. It was actually the one reason I avoided the game, is that I'm not really into these underwater mythical type creatures. And this thing's a really detailed, very nice looking standee, but it doesn't really do that much. And even there's some discussion on BGG as to, does this thing really need to be in the game? It doesn't really add that much. It doesn't take that much. It doesn't reward or punish players by all that much. Is it really necessary? So anyways, we did enjoy the puzzle, and we also realized that we got a couple of rules wrong, things that we both sort of took advantage of equally incorrectly. So, I don't think it really threw the game, but we both agreed that we need to try this again, and I'd like to try out some of the different factions, as again, each one is quite a bit different. So, that was Deep Shelf. Looking forward to digging into this. It also has a 1 to 2 player cooperative campaign, and a lot of folks are saying some good things about that out on BGG, so I'm hoping to check that out maybe even over the weekend. That is, again, Deep Shelf by Ninth Haven Games. And folks, that's the Weekly Ratchet. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for, again, all the words of encouragement and support. Hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving holiday, and I will catch you again soon. Cheers.